The next presentation is from Charkaoui from Ericsson. And for those of you who haven't spotted it, there are a few Ericsson Ayub is a product manager at Ericsson responsible for RCS and IP messaging solution. He has over 14 years global experience in the telecom industry with a multifunctional background including software architecture, marketing and sales. He's been driving the market introduction of the Ericsson RCS messaging solution for the last 2 years, which includes the latest commercially available joyn deployments in Europe. So welcome, Ayub.
Okay, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here. I'm not usually someone who attends a lot of standardization meetings, but I should actually thank Rick Berner here, who invited me here, probably to share Ericsson's view on the actual deployments we're doing. I'm very much involved with the design and productification of these solutions, so it's a different view. We do use the standardization part in order to drive our concepts and architecture, but at the same time we have to deal with the reality of the telco grade product we produce. So at the same time, hopefully I'll give an overview of this in this presentation. The subject of my presentation is very wide, and I stepped back actually and started thinking how to start this presentation, because I've seen that there is a lot of talk about over-the-top and versus mobile operators and service providers, and why we're doing this and how we should be doing. And I think we all see from the presentations this morning that there is a lot of questions around that. So I took a step back and asked myself the question, why are we doing this? And I think it would be good to just do a reality check, so to say. So what are we doing exactly? Basically, we are enabling communication services, and I know the workshop today is about messaging, but messaging is by far the most popular communication service that is used by people today. There's a lot of studies that have confirmed that over and over. I think I've seen a study that mentions that in the North American market, for example, more than 50% of the mobile experience, the communication experience, is around messaging, and that voice comes in a second position compared to that. So people do prefer messaging over voice, and this is the trend, especially for the younger generation. So what we're seeing here is an abundance of communication technologies. As a user today, I have so much choice in front of me. It's like if you take a step back and see how will this be perceived 60 or 70 years ago, it would almost mean like there are cables running between every person on Earth, free to use mediums that can be used to enable communication between people. Today, this medium is IP, of course, because connectivity and data is available to almost everyone. However, the problem is at the end of each connectivity, you have a different technology that serves the communication service. And this has been sparked, obviously, by the omnipresence of mediums and means. The way I see it is this is a dangerous trend, actually, when you look at it. The main reason telephony became such a success, if you think about it, is because of the ubiquitous experience that it was offering in the beginning. I'm afraid that if this trend continues, probably people in 20 or 30 years will be looking back at our time and be amazed that we were able to communicate with somebody else just by knowing his phone number. Maybe this concept of ubiquitous communication technology will disappear if we continue building different communication technologies in different silos. And maybe our children are going to be amazed at our time today, because we are very lucky to be able to just compose a number and talk to someone without thinking about the technology. And I say this, and it's the same thing same concept applies for messaging. It's the same principle. So today, and for me, this looked very much like Babylonian myth and morality story around how humans were building this huge tower, and they were all speaking the same language, and all of a sudden they stopped speaking the same language, and then they stopped building the city. So I think this is a dangerous trend for society in a way. The morality of the story of Babel, of the Tower of Babel, says, and I quoted this just from Wikipedia, by the way. I didn't make an extensive research about this, but it says specifically in the story that the people whose language are confounded simply stop building the city. This is a very strong message to learn from history. What's happening with our communication services? This is a very basic and important service, and we should not be messing up with it. We should provide the societies the means to use it properly. So, and today there is a new aspect that is being added to this equation. It's not only humans that require communication. We're talking about devices being added to the equation, organization, businesses. Everybody wants to communicate. Of course, here I'm not talking about M2M, machine to machine. I'm talking for when at one end of the communication channel there is a human at least. So that's what I'm talking about. And of course, as you know, Ericsson as a company is driving this effort where we have a goal to reach a number of 50 million connected devices by 2020. Was that 2020? Yeah. And there is a huge effort being done in that space. So of course, in the very near future, you'll be receiving messages from your car, from your fridge, from your surveillance system at home, from companies and organizations, from businesses, from the nearby restaurants who wants to share with you an information that is relevant to you. And we see that's happening. There is work in Etsy, in 3GPP to enable the new devices. So think about it, 50 billion connected devices. If they're not talking the same language, what's going to happen to societies? So we need to think about that. This brings the need, regardless who's providing the service. I don't want to say it's mobile operators or over the top or whoever has the ability to build the communication service, but we definitely need a ubiquitous universal communication service. For me, and I mean not just for me, for Ericsson as a company who's very much involved in the development of societies and cultures and organizations and technologies, we strongly believe that this is a very necessary step that our societies need to take, the creation of this universal communication service that will enable the development of societies, economies, and cultures. Now, the road into the definition of this communication service is not very easy because you have a lot of players and they all need to be sitting on the same table in order to do this. I mean, I look at it more from my perspective. When I go and meet my design team every morning, we are building a very important public service. It's required for societies to advance. Communication services, and that's the goal and mission that we have put in our mind in Ericsson. So the question is how, and I think that's the main problem today, is nobody seems to be certain what's the road to take. In Ericsson perspective, we think the road is very simple. If it's not simple, it's not the right solution. And I, like a lot of great minds, have been thinking about this, is whenever you see that there is too many drawings, there's too many flows, too many diagrams to explain one simple thing, which is communication, it seems it's not the right direction. So in Ericsson mind, this is very simple. Communication services has been traditionally provided by telco and operators, mobile operators. And today and in the past, what we had is very telco-oriented terminals. That's including the legacy phones using signaling, and then I include into this category the IMS phones, which are really driven by telecommunication as an industry, and also any IMS-based terminals that may run on a smartphone or even on a PC. Those are the traditional telco terminals, and they do have connectivity into the service provider communication service through the traditional telco interfaces, SIP, MSRP, all the other telco interfaces. On the other hand, we see the emergence of new service points, and that's exactly what's creating the disturbance in the industry. The service points are non-telco or not traditionally telco terminals, and they include over-the-top and applications, soft clients, machines, and web clients. And these we cannot. What we see from reality is you cannot really enforce these people to use the traditional telco protocols. You have to think about new ways to integrate those new service points into the equation. And that's where the open APIs becomes a very important aspect of the solution that we have to define. Of course, what we have seen today is very different from this. For example, over-the-top providers, they do provide their own communication service. They run it, they maintain it, they finance it, they fund it, and they provide it to their own community. And that is, of course, that is fine to some extent. However, the problem is how to sustain this kind of business case for a long period of time. And that's where I think the answer really lies, is what is the business case for over-the-tops into running a complete communication service? I mean, it's not cheap to run a communication service. As a product manager, I know that, it takes a lot of investment in order to maintain a fully operational, reliable communication service. And we have seen many examples in the industry where an over-the-top provider already is struggling with ways to continue the funding of their service. Just think about Yahoo, for example, who's already trying to divest their technology and selling it to another provider, or the quick fall from grace of BlackBerry. I'm saying this, and it's a sad note because I'm Canadian and I love Research in Motion as a company. It's a company that has greatly serve the Canadian economy, but in general, but you see the quick fall from grace of their services, including their BBM service, where people have just switched overnight, and you can see that the numbers are scary when you look at over a 2 years period, where it went from being the best and the most talked about messaging service to almost nowhere. So it is not for over the top, it is not a very simple equation, especially when it comes to funding the service. And a few of them can sustain this for a long period of time. The few, maybe, for example, of course, Facebook, Skype, and Apple, who will continue funding their communication services because they have the power to do so. But for the rest, today users are expecting a free service. That's the only way to make them switch from one place to the other. However, as we know, nothing comes for free. So these over-the-top have to compensate with creating new business models based on the harvesting of the personal information of people. And this is another problem. Today we see a growing awareness in society about what information you are given to any application, specifically on the smartphone business. Before I installed, for example, I used Tango recently. It's a communication service, a new one that's emerged a couple of months ago, or any other one, and let's not take a specific example, but before installing the application, how many people really look at the type of privileges that you are giving to the over-the-top? for giving you the service for free. I mean, the first thing that mobile operators should use in their marketing campaign is to remind the users that nothing is for free. If it's being sold to you for free, it means it is you who's being sold. Somebody told me that, and told me that like 3 or 4 years ago, and I went like, this is not true. But when you actually look at the business plans of these over-the-tops, they're all about using your information to create, to resell it, or to use targeting advertising or some other type of information. Most over-the-top have access to all your communication, your location, the people you talk to, how frequently, and this is a big, help them construct a huge database of information that they can reuse in order to monetize the service. Is this where the industry wants to go? That's a big question. Maybe that is. Maybe people are okay with that. But I know from scanning the forums on the internet that there is a growing awareness against this. People are starting to realize that nothing is for free. They are paying more attention to the privileges they give to application before they install them on their phones and so on. Okay, so far I've talked about only communication services in general, but if we talk about messaging specifically, the same diagram applies. You have the traditional telco terminals, and you have the new service points. And us in Ericsson, we have been commercializing a product, Messaging in One, for a couple of years already, where that provides exactly that. So all telco interfaces combined with the new IT or more internet safe protocols on the side. I will go back to that in a minute. So Messaging in One, if we go back really into Messaging in One has been created in Ericsson in order to address this converged messaging effort that's being done and that is required by the market. As you know, Ericsson is driving a lot of CPM working groups here in OMA and in other standardization groups. We are proud to say that it's the #1 converged platform that is being deployed worldwide. But more importantly, and this is the subject today, is it's IP ready for IMS, LTE, RCS, and CPM. And even more importantly, today this is the only commercially available product that has been proved commercially to implement RCS R5 and RCSE as an application server in a full RCS solution. And I go back, and my presentation today actually is more about this lessons learned from these deployments that we have done in RCS. Yeah. Okay, so the quest for the Universal Communication Service, how it was done so far is you have to define the user experience, to define the standardization technology that will run with it, to implement it, and to have user feedback. User feedback is through focus groups, forums, blogs, and media critics. This circle is actually an iteration circle. It cannot be fixed in time. We cannot just define a standard and then expect it to work perfectly for the end users. And this is the main lesson learned from the deployments, is we have realized that we have to run this circle many times before we get to the perfection of the service. And from an actual, I wanted to share with you a specific experience, which is the joyn experience, where Ericsson has been proudly involved. As you know, joyn has been discussed many times this morning. It has been defined by the G5, and then we have engaged in an endeavor with the groups, Vodafone groups and Telefonica, in order to bring this to a commercial state as soon as possible. So actually, between the time the RCAC specs were out in about February and March last year, to the time we had the solution working and actually deployed in a commercial network, we needed to do that in a record time. The commitment was that the service has to be up and running before before the end of the current year. So it is a very good example where you go from from specifications to an actual implementation, to going back to the specifications, because you have realized that there is a number of things that needs to be done. And that's exactly what we have done in the joyn experience. We have deployed the joyn service in Europe. It is now in commercial service. It has been in Vodafone, live in Vodafone since February last year, and Telefonica has just reached the live status in June this year. And basically, based on this experience of deploying this service, we have made major recommendations into the definition of the RCS R5 specifications, which are being right now discussed in OMA, because from RCS R5 we needed to bring this to OMA in order to anchor them in CPM and simple IM. And those, if you look at the RCS R5 specifications, there are two sections. One section is about just consolidating RCS R4 with RCS E. And the second section is about all the new functionality that we needed to include. And all of this was based on user feedback. It's either user feedback or based on implementation limitations that we have found during the deployment of the service. It is called mainly RCS 5.1. It's all under the same umbrella of RCS R5, but the big changes are into 5.1, and a lot of people here are familiar with this. So this was brought back to GSMA and OMA with this. I'm not going to go to this slide because you all know what joyn is. You know, it was picking the least amount of services that can be good enough to make a difference, but at the same time to reduce the complexity in order to deploy as soon as possible. And I invite you just to go to the joyn website and to get more information about the services themselves. On the other hand, so this is what I was talking about. Today we cannot continue working the same way. I think there is a big shift in the industry that has to happen, and that shift is in the iteration process that by which we build our solutions. I think the iteration between implementation and the wide usage of the service and the standardization effort has to become much more quick and fast in order to enable us to bring more functionality to the markets as soon as possible. So fast and iterative development is a key to evolution. And I have a number of lessons learned for operators who would like to launch RCS. From Ericsson perspective, what we have seen is there is a lot of preparation involved. You need to run the technical and commercial projects in parallel. It's very important that the marketing team is very much aware of the service, and they already have a marketing plan and marketing campaign built up around this. The end-to-end perspective is very important. As you know, IMS is quite complex, and actually a lot of things that are defined in the standardization don't work exactly in that as straightforward when it comes to reality. There is so many parameters and so many things that enter the equation that has to be tested and retested in order to ensure that it's a completely reliable service. Some things that are key is self-provisioning. The users needs to be able to run the service as soon as it's installed. Native application is the best. The engagement with the terminals and client vendors. This is a very important point. I don't have a lot of time, but if I have to emphasize, it will be this. If you're planning as an operator to build your own branded client, then it is very important to engage with the terminal and client vendors as early as possible. Otherwise, if you're just planning to use the white label joyn client, then probably that's not a problem. But then you won't be able to differentiate as much as you'd like to, of course. Today, as a quick note, for the white labeled client. It's actually available on the Google Store today, and that's a white label joyn client that can be installed on any phone and run on any network as long as the operator has activated the service or has deployed the joyn service.
Can we try and wrap up?
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up now. The evolution from here is we have seen that messaging has been the first communication service to go in a over-the-top head-to-head competition, so to say. But in fact, voice and video are coming up. I mean, today, without LTE, you can still provide voice over IP. However, it can be only best effort voice, of course, and that's not a telco grade service. The main difference will be made when LTE will be deployed, and where voice and video will be added to the RCS experience, and with some additions like HD voice and HD video. In the Ericsson solution, we are addressing all these aspects, and we're trying to help operators really make a difference when it comes to showing leadership when it comes to communication services. And with that, I think I'm going to conclude because I don't think I have much time. So thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Ayub. So I think you said that a lot of people, especially younger people, prefer messaging over voice. So messaging is a very important piece of technology. You asked, do we have too many ways to communicate? You said that messaging is actually a very important public service for society. The solution needs to be simple. It takes a lot of investment to run a proper communication service which is reliable. You provide us with some experiences with joyn, and you said that you think a big shift is needed in the industry towards much faster deployment. So are there any questions for Ayub? Antonella? There's a microphone behind you.
Yeah, just one question related, Antonella Napolitano, Telecom Italia, related to the value of voice. You have mentioned voice that will be, an important component when LTE will come. Do you see any value in anticipating this with the, I don't know, best effort solution, or how can you see that?
Sorry, what was the last part?
Yeah, the question is, you were mentioning that VoIP is going to happen with LTE. My question is, do you see any value is anticipating LTE, not to wait until LTE and to launch something that is best effort solution?
Yeah.
There is any value from your perspective to start with this interim solution?
Yeah, that's a very good question that comes back many times. But okay, one thing to go back to is voice is not excluded from the joyn experience, of course. Today, CS voice is used combined with the video sharing, so it gives the impression of having a video calling service. However, there's no synchronization between the voice and the video, and it becomes clear the first time you use the service that there is, if you use voice by itself, it's just circuit switch voice, there's no problem. But if you combine it with video share, then the synchronization is not very good. So users might not be happy with the level of service, and it depends on the quality of the connectivity. However, as we go forward, what's going to happen is I think voice has to be kept as almost a sacred service, service from a perspective of the operators. We should not. If we deploy a voice service, it has to be as reliable as the CS service. I think it's very important to have the quality of service assurance, and that is only possible when it's over LTE or HSPA. I've seen that over HSPA, actually the quality is not bad at all. It can be very good. Combined with an IMS core, you can still provide a very good quality of service. So I think HSPA might be the lowest level of connectivity that you would accept in providing voice over IP. However, anything lower than that cannot be really considered a complete voice service, and it should be flagged like best efforts voice. Like, for example, you're on vacation in Barbados and you have a Wi-Fi connectivity, and you wanna talk to your friends, but then the operator should specifically specify that, you know, either we don't charge for this service because it's a best effort service, or the user has to be aware that quality might not be maintained, for example.
Thank you very much.